Take a close look at this picture. At first glance, it might seem to depict the descent from the cross. But then you realize the two figures are not Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus taking Jesus down from the cross. They are Benedictine monks, and they are climbing up to him. To be precise, they are Cistercians, who live according to the rule of Saint Benedict. The figure on the left, whom Jesus is embracing, is Saint Bernard of Clairvaux, and you can almost hear him whispering three sacred words: Suscipe me, Domine, Latin for "Receive me, O Lord." At the profession, that is, the final lifelong commitment to the monastic life, the rule of Saint Benedict prescribes the singing of a hymn that begins with these words. It is based on Psalm 119, verse 116, and reads as follows: Receive me, Lord, as you have promised, and I shall live. Do not disappoint me in my hope. These words are meant to express that the monk or nun is now ready to place themselves unreservedly and completely in God's hands. As you can imagine, this endeavor cannot be accomplished with a single act. It must be practiced again and again until the end of one's life. And for this purpose, a man revered for his radical personal transformation wrote a book in the mid-16th century that he called Exercitia Spiritualia, Spiritual Exercises. His name? Ignatius of Loyola. Ignatius grew up as a wealthy nobleman in the Spanish Basque country. His training as a knight turned him into a man full of pride, self-confidence, and vanity, who sought nothing more than military glory. Until one day, at the age of 30, he was struck by a cannonball that shattered one of his legs. As a result, Ignatius was confined to his sickbed for months. Since he had no chivalric novels, which were popular at the time, to distract himself and pass the time, he initially took refuge in daydreams about how magnificent and heroic his life would be once he was back to his old self. But then, perhaps out of sheer boredom, he picked up the only books available, a description of the life of Christ and a collection of stories about the lives of the saints. His daydreams began to change, and Ignatius would never return to his former self again. Here is what he noticed. When he daydreamed about his future life as a knight, he felt restless, never satisfied. When he daydreamed about Jesus and the saints, he felt inner peace and fulfillment. Ignatius realized that, with sufficient introspection, he could identify whether thoughts and emotions were of divine origin or the result of evil influence. He called this the discernment of spirits. To deepen this insight, Ignatius left his privileged surroundings and made an incognito pilgrimage to the Benedictine monastery of Montserrat, where he lived nearby as a hermit, practicing the strictest forms of asceticism and penance. True to his radical nature, he prayed for 7 hours a day and once nearly flagellated himself to death. And it was at this point that he began to write down the fundamental ideas of his spiritual exercises. Ignatius made a pilgrimage to Jerusalem as a beggar, studied philosophy and theology in Paris, was ordained a priest, and eventually founded the Society of Jesus, the Jesuit order. Jesuits take the customary vows of chastity and poverty. What distinguishes the Society of Jesus from other orders is its absolute obedience to the Pope. Wherever the Pope sends Jesuits to serve, they will follow his commands. This commitment has made Jesuits outstanding missionaries throughout the world. The ideal of obedience, undoubtedly a remnant of his former life as a soldier, is also reflected in the spiritual exercises, and particularly in a prayer that captures the spirit of Ignatius like no other. The spiritual exercises are divided into 4 thematic phases, each lasting about a week. The goal is to reorder your life through prayer, Christian meditation, and contemplation in such a way that it is entirely focused on God. In other words, to overcome your own will. At the end of the spiritual exercises, you arrive at a prayer known as the Suscipe Prayer. Suscipe, as you may recall from the beginning of this video, is Latin for receive or take. The prayer begins with almost the same words as the psalm that monks and nuns recite at their profession according to the rule of Saint Benedict, Suscipe, Domine. But then, it takes a turn and becomes more specific, which, when understood in its full dimension, makes it perhaps the most difficult, most radical prayer. Take, Lord, and receive all my liberty, my memory, my understanding, and my entire will, all I have and call my own. You have given all to me. To you, Lord, I return it. Everything is yours. Do with it what you will. Give me only your love and your grace. That is enough for me. Amen. Let's go back to the image from the beginning and ask yourself, are you truly ready to let Jesus Christ embrace you? Which means surrendering everything to him. To truly acknowledge that his will be done and not yours, and in this sense, to become an obedient servant, a miles Christianus, a Christian soldier. It seems almost impossible, until it isn't. Thanks so much for watching, and see you next time.